Why did the room turn cold the second they walked in? That was the whispered question overheard near Table 9 as Prince Harry and Meghan Markle made their entrance at the 2026 Critics' Choice Awards. It should have been their big return. It should have been triumphant. Instead, it became something else entirely. The lights were bright, the cameras flashed, and the event was rolling live to millions watching from around the globe. And yet, somehow, in a venue designed for celebration and glamour, a different energy cut through the room. A low, rolling tension. Not anger, not excitement, something colder. Before we continue, please hit the like button, subscribe to the channel, and turn on the notification bell for updates. And then the sound. It wasn't a shout. It wasn't dramatic. It was worse. It was subtle. A ripple of boos, too quiet to be officially acknowledged, but too loud to ignore. And somewhere within it, a voice, half laugh, half mock, cut through with the two most humiliating syllables of the night. Why? The word echoed just beneath the applause, like a glitch in the performance. And for a brief moment, just a flicker of a second, Meghan's smile broke. Harry's jaw clenched. A glance passed between them. But then the masks returned. So what really happened that night? What don't the official broadcast show? And why, after years of building their brand and positioning themselves as global thought leaders, did Hollywood, the one place where reinvention is practically a sport, turn on them so publicly? Because what went down at the 2026 Critics' Choice Awards wasn't just a bad night. It was a reckoning. Let's rewind. Before the world saw the edited clips, before the headlines started spinning, there was a story behind the smiles, a build-up years in the making. A storm quietly brewing behind red carpets, podcast deals, Netflix drama, leaked royal letters, and broken friendships. And when that storm finally arrived, it did so in a room full of A-listers, live mics, and way too many cameras. But make no mistake, this didn't happen overnight. This was the moment it all broke, but the cracks had been forming long before. So what changed? How did two people once hailed as the future of the modern monarchy, beloved by fans, protected by powerful friends, end up booed at one of Hollywood's most elite events? Was it betrayal? Was it burnout? Or was it something darker? Because behind every glittering event, there are secrets. And behind every public fall, there's almost always a private war. The calm before the humiliation. In the days leading up to the event, the Sussex camp had been unusually quiet. That in itself should have been a red flag. Normally, their appearances come wrapped in curated headlines, sneak peeks of designer gowns, anonymous quotes from insiders hyping the upcoming spectacle. But this time, nothing. No leaks, no teasers, no friendly editorials setting the stage. Just silence. According to a stylist close to one of the celebrity glam squads, there was chatter. Whispers that Meghan and Harry were making a comeback. That despite the media scandals, the fading Spotify deal, and the rumored tension with Netflix, the couple had planned to use the Critics' Choice stage as their moment to remind everyone who they were. A rebrand. A resurrection. But Hollywood isn't a place that forgives quietly. And it certainly doesn't forget. Especially not when the people in question once painted it as complicit in their pain, only to later cling to it as a sanctuary when the royal bridges burned. So maybe this wasn't a surprise. Maybe this was inevitable. A room full of smiles that didn't reach the eyes. You can always tell when someone walks into a space and doesn't belong there anymore. It's not about dress or posture or poise. It's about presence. And when Meghan Markle walked into the Critics' Choice Awards, flanked by Harry in a crisp black tux, the room's energy shifted. Not with awe, not with admiration, but with tension. It's a skill, really. How Hollywood performs politeness while delivering pure ice. A slight pause and applause. A smile that fades too quickly. The avoidance of eye contact. It's a silent choreography everyone understands, but no one acknowledges out loud. And Meghan? She noticed it. She's lived in this world before. She knows the difference between admiration and avoidance. And Harry? He looked like a man trying to remember why he agreed to come. Still, they pushed forward. The cameras demanded it. And for a moment, it seemed like they might survive the night on sheer performance alone. Until the first boo. When did the shift begin? Let's go back even further. Because this isn't just about one night. This is about a series of moves, intentional or not, that led them here. Ask yourself, how did a couple who once had Oprah, Beyoncé, and Serena Williams in their corners suddenly become Hollywood pariahs. Could it be the lawsuits? The rumors of internal mistreatment at Archewell? The alleged private demands that leaked from behind the scenes? Or maybe it was the public contradictions, the tears shed in interviews versus the multi-million-dollar deals that followed? People watched. People took notes. And slowly, those once silent observers started pulling away. One A-list producer, who asked not to be named, told a journalist off the record, "There's a limit. Everyone wants a redemption arc, but you have to stop burning bridges long enough to cross one." And perhaps that was the problem. The bridges were already ash. Why this story matters now? It's easy to write this off as celebrity drama. Two rich, beautiful people getting booed at an awards show. Who cares, right? Wrong. Because this wasn't just a moment of public embarrassment. It was a temperature check. It was Hollywood, the machine that once embraced them, pulling the plug. And if they lose this audience? The one they fled to after leaving royal life behind? Where do they go next? Who still takes their calls? And more importantly, what does this say about the future of public sympathy, cancel culture, and the line between victimhood and brand building? Because for years, Harry and Meghan expertly played the game of media control. But the game has changed. Now, they're the headline, but not in the way they hoped. And then came the look. Let's go back to that moment. Yes, that moment. Meghan, mid-step on the red carpet. Her hand raised in a controlled wave. Her smile wide but strained. Harry, standing slightly behind her, scanning the crowd. And then it hits. A half-second ripple. A mix of sound, boos, nervous laughter, and something that sounded suspiciously like a sarcastic clap. And Meghan? She faltered, just for a breath. But in Hollywood, a breath is an eternity. The cameras caught it. Social media looped it. And the world replayed it over and over again. She recovered, of course. She always does. But this time, the damage wasn't internal. It was public, and it was just beginning. Because what happened next changed everything. Backstage tension, private snubs, a hot mic, an actress who went rogue, a host who took aim live on stage, and a betrayal so personal, it left even their closest allies stunned. But we're not there yet. Because first, you need to understand how deep this goes. Because this night didn't just expose their downfall. It triggered it. And if you thought the red carpet was awkward, just wait. Because what came next would change everything, and no one saw it coming. How do you smile when you know the room wants to see you fall? That was the silent question hanging between Meghan and Harry as they stepped onto the red carpet at the 2026 Critics' Choice Awards. From the outside, it looked like any other high-glamour entrance. The photographers shouted. The cameras clicked. The lights burned bright enough to bleach the truth right off anyone's face. But make no mistake, this was not a warm welcome. Not by a long shot. And deep down, they knew it. Meghan's smile was practiced, just like always. Chin slightly tilted, eyes wide but soft, that trained actress glow in full effect. She had the walk down too, smooth, elegant, every movement calibrated like a royal performance. Only this time, the crowd wasn't playing along. Because something was missing. Applause. Real applause. The kind that spills out spontaneously, that welcomes, that means, we're glad you're here. What Meghan and Harry got instead was polite silence. The worst kind of reception in Hollywood. The kind that says everything without saying anything at all. And it wasn't just the fans. It was the room. The insiders. The power players. The very people who once invited them in, and now barely made eye contact. Did they clap? Sure, a little. But it wasn't applause. It was compliance. It was damage control. A few actors even overdid it, clapping a bit too hard, smiling a bit too wide. That's always the giveaway, isn't it? The overcompensators know exactly what they're hiding. A chilly red carpet. Let's talk about the carpet itself. It's supposed to be the moment of glory, the climax before the ceremony. You're styled by the best in the business. You've prepped for weeks. You know the cameras are rolling, and every inch of you is ready for scrutiny, from your outfit to your expression to the angle of your wave. Meghan wore silver. Sleek, tailored, and no doubt expensive. Harry was in a classic tux, with that slightly hesitant smile he's known for, part charm, part discomfort. But despite the coordinated effort, something felt off. And it wasn't the clothes. It was the air. Thick, quiet, cold. Like walking into a party you weren't really invited to, but showed up anyway. And if you were watching closely, you'd have seen the signs. The way one correspondent hesitated before calling their names. The subtle shift in the body language of fellow attendees. Shoulders turning away, eyes darting to phones. Conversations suddenly erupting the moment the Sussexes walked by. Hollywood has a language all its own. And on that red carpet, it spoke volumes. Why were they really there? Here's the thing. Meghan and Harry weren't up for any awards. They weren't presenting. They weren't producing. They weren't even sponsoring. So, why were they invited? Some sources say it was a last-minute RSVP. Others claim it was part of a strategic comeback tour. The kind that includes a carefully curated appearance here, a conveniently timed podcast there, and maybe even a mysterious new project in development. But critics weren't buying it. Not this time. Because while the Sussexes might have arrived with intent, the room received them with restraint. And for a couple who once commanded global attention by merely changing their Instagram bio, that shift was catastrophic. The wall of faces moment. Here's something few people noticed. Unless they were watching very closely. As Meghan and Harry posed for photos, cameras flashed, of course. But behind those cameras, past the velvet ropes, stood a line of industry folks, agents, producers, and insiders. Some were looking. Most weren't. One woman, an exec at a major studio, according to leaked guest lists, was even seen turning her back as the couple approached the step-in repeat. A small gesture, barely noticeable, but brutal in its symbolism. Because in an industry built on relationships, optics are everything. And in that moment, Meghan and Harry weren't icons. They were outsiders. Worse, former insiders who pushed too far. A flash from the past. It wasn't always like this. There was a time, 2018, to be exact, when Meghan's every move was met with breathless adoration. She was the fairy tale come to life. The American princess. The outsider who'd conquered the firm. And Harry? He was the rebel with a cause. Together, they were unstoppable. And then came the exit. Then came Oprah. Then came the tell-alls. The documentaries. The lawsuits. The unraveling. At first, people understood. Sympathy was real. But as time went on, and the stories kept piling up, a quiet fatigue set in. An unspoken question began to hover. Are they ever going to move on? Apparently, many in that Critics' Choice room had already answered it. With a resounding, nope. The look that said it all. Halfway through the carpet walk, just before they were ushered inside, a camera caught Meghan glancing at Harry. And in that glance was everything. Tension, recognition, resignation. She knew. He knew. This was not a warm return. This was something else entirely. And then, just behind them, another camera caught it. A flash. A whisper. A quick, subtle head shake from a major actress just a few feet away. We'll get to who that actress was later. But in that moment, it was a dagger. And Meghan saw it. Her face didn't change, but her hand clenched ever so slightly. Her smile sharpened, just enough to say, I see you too. Social media starts buzzing. Meanwhile, on the internet, the footage started circulating within minutes. Side-by-side comparisons from their 2020 NAACP entrance versus tonight's chilly reception. TikTok users were already dissecting body language. Twitter, X, was trending with hashtags like #FrozenCarpet and #CriticsChoiceCringe. And then came the Reddit threads. Speculation, theories, insider scoops. But one thread stood out. It was titled, Something's Off with Meghan Tonight. And the top comment? It's like she knows the mask isn't working anymore. Thousands upvoted it. Thousands agreed. And the night was still young. The invisible divide. As the couple finally stepped inside the venue, the energy shifted again. The red carpet was over. Now came the main event. Only, there was a problem. Their table was in the room. But their allies? Were not. Tyler Perry, missing. Oprah, no show. Gayle King, nowhere to be found. Even their rumored Netflix collaborators? Scattered at other tables. No eye contact. No waves. Just distance. Calculated, professional, sterile distance. And in that moment, another realization hit. This wasn't an oversight. This was intentional. And Meghan knew it. Harry knew it. But there was no turning back now. So they Saturday. And waited. And smiled. They clapped when they were supposed to. They laughed at the right jokes. They posed when the cameras turned. But the tension was unmistakable. And then, Just as the first award was being announced, a voice from somewhere near the back of the venue rose above the polite murmur. Soft, slurred, but crystal clear. Go home. It was quickly hushed. Staff rushed in. Security whispered to the man involved. But the damage was done, because everyone heard it. Everyone felt it. And no one, not one celebrity, defended them. Not in that moment. Not in any moment after. Instead, Meghan leaned in toward Harry and whispered something. Something we'll come back to later. Because it wasn't caught on mic. But it was caught on camera. And that footage would leak within the hour. But before that could happen, a presenter walked out onto the stage. And what he said next would send shockwaves through the entire venue. But what came next would crack their composure and trigger a firestorm that no PR team could bury. The presenter walks out, and Hollywood holds its breath. The first presenter of the night was a well-known actor. Charismatic, comfortable on stage. The kind of guy who can make even a bad joke land. He strolled out to applause and delivered the standard pleasantries. Good evening, everyone. It's great to be here celebrating some of the best work in film and television this year. Harmless, charming, expected. But then it shifted. Without missing a beat, he launched into a joke. One that wasn't on the teleprompter. A joke that didn't land. Because it wasn't supposed to. He smirked and looked right at the audience. Well, you know it's a great night when everyone who wasn't nominated still shows up. Hope they brought extra bodyguards. A laugh. Awkward. Sharp. Targeted. No one said the names. They didn't have to. The camera panned slowly across the audience. And there, seated near the center, were Meghan and Harry. Motionless. Smiling. But only just. Micro reactions, macro damage. That moment, barely 10 seconds long, lit the internet on fire. In slow motion, TikTok users analyzed Meghan's brow twitch. Harry's clenched hand. The rapid blink. The long inhale. All of it. Was it planned? Was it revenge? Or was it Hollywood's way of telling them, you're not above the room anymore? And the audience? They knew better than to laugh too loudly. But they still laughed. Even those who'd worked with the Sussexes. Even those who once posted support. It was the kind of moment you can't walk back. And the Sussexes felt it. Deeply. Because it wasn't just a dig. It was a signal. The room was no longer on their side. The PR playbook, freezing in plain sight. Here's the thing. Meghan and Harry have trained for moments like this. Media strategy is their game. They know how to control optics. But what do you do when the optics turn on you live without warning? You freeze. You pivot. You pray the camera cuts away. And that's exactly what happened. Meghan's smile never dropped, but it shifted. It hardened, turned into something fixed and mechanical. Harry? He looked down. 1 second too long. And then, right back up again. But the damage was already done. The audience members who turned away. After the presenter's jab, something even stranger happened. 2 guests at a nearby table visibly turned their backs. Not by accident. Not subtly. They turned their bodies away from Meghan and Harry as if to say, you're not part of this anymore. One of those guests was a rising star in indie film. The other? A director who once publicly supported Meghan after the Oprah interview. A fan caught the moment on camera. It went viral in less than an hour. Captioned, "When Hollywood ghosts you in 4K. The video has 8.3 million views as of this morning. And counting. So why did they stay? That's the million-dollar question, isn't it? Why didn't they leave? They could have. At any moment. They weren't presenting. They weren't nominated. They had every reason to slip out quietly, regroup, save face. But they didn't. They stayed. Smiled. Clapped. Sat through every awkward moment like it didn't bother them. But we know better. Because minutes later, a backstage camera would catch a different side. A crack in the mask. A flash of emotion. A single line from Meghan, whispered just loud enough to be caught by the boom mic. I knew this was a mistake. Harry didn't respond. He looked straight ahead. Frozen. Eyes glassy. Like a man who knew the avalanche was just beginning. Audience watchers, the look-away game. Hollywood actors have their own way of communicating, and it's not through words. It's through absence. No eye contact. No nods. No acknowledgement. And that was the real punishment that night. Not the booze. Not the jab from the presenter. But the wall of indifference that followed. A-listers they once called friends suddenly couldn't see them. Producers they'd worked with, magically engrossed in their phones. Even publicists, the most diplomatic species in Hollywood, avoided their table like it was radioactive. The signal was clear. They weren't welcome. Not anymore. The emotional boiling point. About 45 minutes into the show, a second awkward moment hit. A rising star, young, fresh, buzzy, won an award. She gave a beautiful speech. Raw, real, full of gratitude. And then, at the end, she said, "And to everyone who told me to just play the victim, thank you for the motivation. You know who you are." The room erupted. Cheers, laughs, a few slow claps. And again, without being named, all eyes turned to Meghan. Not because she was the target, but because everyone wanted her to be. That's how far the fall had gone. Even unspoken slights were being interpreted through the Meghan lens. And the worst part? She knew it. Harry's silent breakdown. We need to talk about Harry for a moment. Because while Meghan kept up the performance, smiling, nodding, enduring, Harry was unraveling. Not publicly, not dramatically, but internally. At one point, he asked for water. Twice. His hand trembled slightly as he lifted the glass. He rubbed the back of his neck. Repeatedly. A body language expert reviewing the footage later said, "It's classic displacement behavior. Stress, shame, powerlessness." He didn't speak much during the ceremony, but his silence said everything. He was there physically, but emotionally, he was gone. The whisper that broke the internet. Right before the break between award segments, the couple leaned in toward one another. What Meghan said, again, caught on a boom mic, would spark more headlines than any speech of the night. She said, "They're going to destroy us." Again. The word again lingered, hung in the air, repeated in every tabloid, every think piece, every social media echo chamber. Was it a reference to the royal family? To the media? To the elite circles they once thought had their backs? No one knows for sure. But that didn't stop the speculation, or the memes, or the think pieces. Because in that moment, it was clear. Meghan wasn't just uncomfortable. She was afraid. But what came next wasn't just embarrassing. It was calculated. A moment later, a seat filler was asked to move. Why? So someone else, an A-lister, could sit closer to the stage. Guess where that new seat was? Directly in front of Meghan and Harry, blocking their view, cutting off their camera angle, just coincidentally ruining the one good angle that still made them look centered. Coincidence? Or message? Either way, the message landed. Because within 5 minutes of that move, Meghan's posture changed. She shifted, crossed her arms, leaned in to whisper again. But this time, her mic was off. Her smile was gone. And the cameras had already moved on. To someone shinier, safer, more bankable. And that's when it hit them. This was never going to be their night. It was going to be their warning. And the next event on the calendar? They were already being uninvited. But what came next wasn't just cruel. It was betrayal from someone they never expected. What if the first person to boo wasn't just a stranger? It's one thing to face a cold room. It's another to be deliberately humiliated. And when that soft but piercing boo echoed through the auditorium just moments into the Critics' Choice Awards, many viewers at home dismissed it as a drunk attendee or an accidental outburst. But what if it wasn't? What if that first boo wasn't random? What if it was planned? Whispers from multiple behind-the-scenes sources suggest exactly that. And if what they're saying is true, then that single syllable wasn't just heckling. It was a signal. The public declaration that Meghan and Harry were no longer protected. Not by Hollywood, not by media handlers, and not by the invisible alliances they once counted on. This was the first strike, and it was designed to leave a mark. Let's rewind the tape. Roughly 13 minutes into the live ceremony, right after the first awards were handed out, there was a lull. Applause had died down. People were settling in. The host was bantering lightly as the next category was introduced. And that's when it happened. Not loud, not theatrical, just sharp enough to cut through the ambient noise. Bo. A single voice. Male. Mid-range pitch. 3 seats from the back, left balcony. And then, a chuckle. A couple of whispers. And one soft clap, sarcastic, slow. The cameras didn't catch it, but the mics did. So did the journalists in the room. And within 60 seconds, the clip began spreading like wildfire on social media. Some said it was disrespectful. Others called it brave. But most were shocked it even happened at all, because events like these are tightly controlled. Audience members are vetted, screened, rehearsed. So how did someone with that kind of intent even get in? Who was he? That's the question everyone began asking. And it didn't take long for Reddit to do its thing. By midnight, internet sleuths had combed through every guest list, table seating chart, and red carpet photo available. They matched outfits, compared hairstyles, cross-checked badge IDs visible in blurred frames. And finally, they zeroed in on one name. Maxwell Kramer, a name unfamiliar to the general public, but very familiar in Hollywood circles. An executive producer, mid-tier, known for mid-budget thrillers and crime procedurals. Not an A-lister, not a nobody, but someone who used to work with Netflix's unscripted division, the same department where the Sussex's Heart of Invictus series had once been greenlit. And, according to one former Netflix employee, someone who'd allegedly been cut out of Meghan and Harry's docuseries deal after internal conflicts. Let's just say he didn't appreciate the way things were handled, the source told an entertainment blogger. You don't burn bridges like that in Hollywood. Not without smoke showing up somewhere. Was it really revenge? The working theory? That Maxwell's presence at the Critics' Choice Awards wasn't just social. It was strategic. Insiders believe he'd been invited by a director friend. No one suspected anything. But the moment Harry and Meghan's arrival was confirmed, he saw his opportunity. One comment. One boo. Just loud enough to land. Just quiet enough to be untraceable. Except, of course, it was traced. And now, he's suddenly deleted his Twitter. His Instagram is on private. And multiple blogs are reporting that he's not available for comment. Coincidence? Doubtful. Because the Sussexes have enemies. Not just tabloid enemies. Not just royal enemies. But industry enemies. People they've snubbed, ghosted, contradicted. People with long memories and access to microphones. Why this boo hit harder than any tabloid? Think about it. They've been trashed by the Daily Mail. Mocked by Piers Morgan. Dragged by social media on more than one occasion. But none of that mattered, because they had Hollywood. Hollywood was their fortress. Their validation. Their second act. Until now. That boo. It broke the illusion. It pierced the myth that they were untouchable in liberal, elite, entertainment circles. And that, more than anything else, is what made it devastating. Because when your own side turns on you, there's nowhere left to run. Audience reactions. Who smiled? Who flinched? Here's where it gets interesting. Multiple clips show the moments directly after the boo. Some faces in the audience turned stone cold. Others smirked. A few clearly didn't hear it. But 3 people? They definitely did. And their reactions were telling. One actress, former co-star of Meghan on Suits, smirked. Not dramatically, just a slight twitch of the lip. Enough to be noticed. Enough to spark 2.4 million views on TikTok under the caption, "She'd been waiting for this moment." A well-known activist and talk show host looked visibly uncomfortable. Shifted in her seat. Checked her phone. Avoided glancing in their direction for the rest of the night. An A-list actor whispered to his seatmate and laughed. The moment was caught on a side camera. The internet guessed at the words. Subtitles flooded in. He said, "Told you they'd get it tonight." Real or imagined. Doesn't matter. The internet believes it. And that belief spreads faster than fact. The Sussexes' reaction in slow motion. Harry turned first. Subtle. A slow swivel of the head, eyes darting upward toward the balcony. Meghan didn't look at all. Not immediately. Instead, she exhaled. Her lips tightened. She touched the back of her earring. Her classic stalling move, often caught in interviews when she's holding back emotion. But the tension was there. You could see it in her shoulders. Feel it in the quiet around their table. This wasn't just awkward. This was hostile. And for a couple trained in controlling narrative, this moment was slipping through their fingers. Backstage panic. Within 15 minutes of the incident, their team had already sprung into action. Staff were seen moving toward production managers. Aides whispered into walkies. A PR rep left her seat entirely and was spotted backstage, phone glued to her ear. Damage control had begun. But how do you do damage control for something that everyone saw? You don't. You pivot. You leak your own spin. You plant a counter-narrative. And that's exactly what Meghan's team allegedly tried to do. They floated a story. An anonymous source quote, suggesting the boo came from a disruptive guest who had already been warned. Problem? Security footage contradicted it. And then someone leaked that too. This was turning into a slow-motion car crash, and everyone had front-row seats. Harry's boiling point. We'll end this part of the chapter with the moment Harry snapped. Not publicly, not loudly, but enough for people at nearby tables to notice. Just before the second award segment, a production assistant walked by and accidentally brushed Meghan's chair. Startled, she turned. The assistant apologized immediately. Meghan smiled politely. Harry? Not so much. He leaned forward, voice low but sharp, and muttered something under his breath. It was caught, not by a mic, but by the lips of someone seated 2 tables down. A journalist. Off duty. She tweeted what she believed he said. Can't even give her space to breathe. This is disgusting. The tweet went viral in 20 minutes. The words weren't confirmed. But again, they didn't have to be. The damage was done. And what followed wouldn't just sting. It would ignite the backlash that would unravel everything they had left. The tweet that lit the fuse. Once that tweet hit, can't even give her space to breathe. This is disgusting. The narrative shifted fast. It wasn't just about a boo anymore. Now it was about temperament, control, entitlement. Within minutes, screenshots spread. Commentary exploded. And suddenly, the Sussexes weren't being portrayed as victims of heckling, but as volatile, hypersensitive, and unable to handle even mild discomfort. And Hollywood noticed. Because nothing scares an industry faster than unpredictability. The second boo? Yes, there was one. Here's something that didn't make the official coverage. There was a second boo, quieter than the first, almost swallowed by applause. It happened during a transition between awards, when the camera was focused on the stage and the orchestra was tuning up. But people in the room heard it. This time, it came from the floor level, not the balcony. Female voice. Sharp. Short. One word. Enough. Security didn't react. No one shushed it. Because by then, the room had tacitly decided something important. This was no longer an interruption. It was commentary. And when commentary becomes acceptable in spaces like this, that's when reputations truly crack. Why no one shut it down? At events like the Critics' Choice Awards, disruptions are handled instantly. Audience members are escorted out for far less. So why wasn't this person removed? Why wasn't the situation addressed? Because, according to 2 production insiders, the producers made a call. A deliberate one. Let it pass, one source allegedly said over headset. Translation? Don't protect them. That decision alone speaks volumes. Because once an institution stops protecting you, it's over. And the Sussexes felt it. Meghan's internal shift. Something changed in Meghan after that second comment. You can see it clearly in the footage. Her posture stiffened. Her smile stopped reaching her eyes entirely. She stopped engaging with the room. No more nodding. No more polite laughter. Just stillness. A kind of internal withdrawal. And here's the contradiction that fascinated viewers later. This was the woman who once lectured the world about resilience, about rising above hate, about using your voice. And now, she looked cornered, and people noticed, not with sympathy, but with judgment. The internet turns ruthless. By the time the ceremony hit its halfway point, the internet had already picked a side. Clips were edited, sound effects added, mock applause layered over booing. TikTok creators reenacted the moment using exaggerated expressions and captions like, "When you thought Hollywood would save you," and "POV, you left the monarchy for this." Even neutral viewers began asking uncomfortable questions. Why did they attend at all? Why not sit this one out? Why keep pushing for relevance in a room that clearly didn't want them? And then came the cruelest line of the night, spoken not by a heckler, but by a fellow guest. The whisper that crossed the line. During a commercial break, while cameras were down but mics still rolling lightly, a woman seated behind Meghan was overheard whispering to her companion. She loves an audience, even when it hates her. That sentence, leaked by a freelance journalist seated nearby, spread like wildfire. It was brutal, personal, and devastatingly precise, because it echoed what critics had been saying for years. That Meghan didn't fear controversy. She thrived on it. And suddenly, the room seemed to agree. Harry's realization. Up until that point, Harry had been in defense mode. Protective, tense, angry. But after that whisper, something changed. He stopped scanning the room, stopped reacting, stopped trying to read faces. He leaned back, folded his hands, stared straight ahead. It wasn't resignation. It was recognition. The look of someone realizing, too late, that the game they thought they were playing was already over. Hollywood had moved on, and it hadn't invited them along. The unspoken agreement in the room. Here's the uncomfortable truth. No one stood up for them. Not one person. Not a joke to defuse tension. Not a supportive glance. Not a hand squeeze from a famous friend. Nothing. And that silence? That was the loudest sound of the night. Because Hollywood operates on signals. And the signal was unanimous. Distance yourselves. Don't engage. Don't defend. Let it happen. Because tomorrow, this story would write itself. And no one wanted to be quoted on the wrong side of it. Why this boo was different. This wasn't random heckling. This wasn't a drunk fan. This was social permission. The moment when criticism became acceptable in elite spaces. When the narrative tipped from they're controversial to they're expendable. And that's the most dangerous place any public figure can land. Because once people feel safe mocking you publicly, the fall accelerates. The final moment of Chapter 2. As the ceremony pushed on, Meghan leaned toward Harry one last time. No mic. No camera. Just the two of them. Her lips moved slowly. Deliberately. According to a lip reader consulted later, she said. This was set up. Harry didn't answer. He just nodded. Once. And in that nod was confirmation. That the boo wasn't an accident. That the room had decided. And that whatever was coming next wouldn't be subtle. Because the next chapter wasn't about whispers or boos. It was about something far more humiliating. Something planned. Something printed. Something that told the world exactly where Harry and Meghan stood. And it was written right there on the seating chart. What if the real insult wasn't spoken, but assigned, printed, and laminated in gold foil? You can recover from a heckle. You can ignore a smirk. You can even spin a bad joke at your expense. But in Hollywood, there is one brutal form of rejection that cuts deeper than any headline. The seating chart. Because at events like the Critics' Choice Awards, where you sit is more than just a logistical matter. It's a hierarchy, a power map, a declaration of relevance. And for Meghan Markle and Prince Harry, their seats didn't just place them near the back. They placed them outside the circle entirely. Who makes the seating chart and why it's deadly? Let's start with the basics. The seating plan at the Critics' Choice Awards is not random. It's not alphabetical. It's not diplomatic. It's strategic. Each table is curated by producers, publicists, showrunners, and studio execs with one goal in mind: maximize star power optics. Big nominees and presenters are in the front center rows. A-listers connected to buzzy projects get prime camera angles. People with rising clout are placed close to bigger fish, networking gold. And those whose buzz has faded, they're put where the cameras won't roam, where the host won't riff, where the action doesn't happen. And this year, that's exactly where Meghan and Harry were seated. Table 23, the Siberia of the ballroom. When the full seating chart was leaked, yes, leaked, just hours after the ceremony, internet sleuths quickly spotted something shocking. Table 23. That's where the Sussexes were placed. At first glance, it seemed fine, neutral. But then comparison started. They weren't seated with Netflix execs, not with A-list directors, not even with other British actors, where they might have had some camaraderie. Instead, they were surrounded by a lesser-known podcast host, two supporting actresses from a short film category, a television host from a streaming network's fashion show, and, get this, a celebrity chef turned YouTube influencer. No disrespect to those individuals, but Meghan and Harry? Once hobnobbing with royalty and Oscar winners, now boxed in with lifestyle personalities and content creators. It wasn't just a downgrade. It was a message. Why this table meant rejection. Publicists will tell you, every table is a story. And this one told the tale of two people no longer considered bankable. They weren't seated near the stage. They weren't near the exits, where VIPs are sometimes put for security. They weren't flanked by allies or co-stars. They were placed where they could be seen, but not heard. It was deliberate, calculated, and humiliating. The other tables told the real story. Let's contrast. Oprah's table, empty this year, was still listed near the front. Tyler Perry, seated just 3 tables from center, even though he didn't have a film out this year. A minor character actor from a hit Netflix series, placed 2 tables ahead of Meghan and Harry. The disparity was impossible to ignore. And the internet didn't ignore it. They labeled Table 23 Exile Island. Meme pages flooded with Photoshopped survivor torches and captions like, When you used to be royalty, and now you're next to a TikTok chef. Cruel? Yes. Accurate? Sadly, yes. The one person who tried to help, but backed out. There's a small detail that got buried in the chaos, but reveals even more. Originally, according to event planning documents obtained by page 6, Meghan and Harry were meant to be seated at table 12. That's a significant upgrade. Closer to the action. More prestige. But then, 24 hours before the event, someone pulled out. A producer. One of Meghan's rumored allies. And when he pulled out, so did their place at table 12. Reassigned. Relegated. Back to 23. And no one stopped it. That says everything. Meghan's reaction when she saw the card. An insider. Allegedly a volunteer with access to the ballroom during setup, shared a moment on a private forum that has since leaked. According to their post, Meghan's reaction to seeing the table assignment was icy but composed. She reportedly looked at the card, said nothing, just smiled faintly and murmured, "Interesting," then turned to Harry and whispered something in his ear. He nodded, stared at the floor. That's it. No protest. No request for reassignment. They knew. They understood the game being played, and they chose to sit in silence. The photographers knew exactly where they were. Here's another layer of the sting. Photographers, briefed in advance, are told which tables to focus on during B-roll pans. Table 23 was not on the priority list, which meant less screen time, fewer cutaways, no accidental reaction shots during punchlines or emotional speeches. In other words, they were practically invisible. And in Hollywood, invisibility is worse than mockery. It's erasure. The actresses who switched seats. One of the most talked about behind-the-scenes moments of the night? Two young actresses, both rising stars from a breakout streaming drama, were initially seated at table 23, right next to the Sussexes. But 10 minutes before the ceremony began, they switched tables, claiming they had publicity obligations and needed to sit with their cast. Totally believable. Except one of them later posted an Instagram story tagged at table 17, with her cast nowhere in sight. That story was deleted within an hour, but not before fans screenshot it and launched a firestorm online. Not even the newbies want to sit with them, one post read. They're radioactive, said another. Harsh. Yes, but undeniably reflective of the mood that night. Who they sat closest to, and what that meant. Let's get specific. The couple sitting directly across from Meghan and Harry? An influencer couple with a joint lifestyle brand, recently embroiled in their own quiet scandal involving alleged AI-generated charity photos. Not exactly great company. To Meghan's left, a former fashion journalist turned podcast host known for snarky celebrity commentary. To Harry's right, an awkwardly placed empty seat, filled halfway through the show by a substitute who spent most of the evening texting under the table. None of these people were threats, but none were friends either. And that's the thing. The Sussexes weren't being attacked. They were being isolated, strategically and publicly. Why the seating chart cut deeper than any boo? Here's the brutal truth. Words fade. Booing passes. But table placements? They're printed, archived, photographed, analyzed. They tell exactly where you rank. And this year, the message to Harry and Meghan was loud and clear. You don't rank. Not anymore. And that, perhaps, was the real sting. Not the jokes, not the whispers, but the realization that after everything, after the interviews, the documentaries, the memoirs, the fight for their truth, they had walked into the one room they thought still wanted them, and sat at a table that told them otherwise. But it would get worse, because someone very powerful refused to even share the same row. And that snub was personal. The row that rewrote the narrative. You can measure clout in many ways. Applause, mentions, awards. But in elite Hollywood circles, sometimes it's the things left unsaid, the moves made quietly that carry the most weight. Like when someone refuses to sit in the same row as you. That's what happened the moment a certain very powerful media mogul, known for backing major campaigns, producing Emmy-winning content, and being one of the few individuals who once publicly supported Meghan, made a last-minute request to move seats. Her reason? Proximity concerns. Translation, don't put me anywhere near that table. Let's be clear. This wasn't about security. It wasn't about cameras. It was optics. It was about preserving her brand. And if this particular powerhouse, who had once posed arm in arm with Meghan on magazine covers, was now orchestrating physical distance? Then the message was undeniable. Allegiances were dead. The Hollywood machine had quietly pressed eject. And Meghan and Harry were now floating without a tether. Why this one person's absence was devastating. This mogul's absence didn't go unnoticed. Paparazzi had been tipped off about her expected appearance. Red carpet reporters speculated about a potential photo op with the Sussexes. Outlets had prepared headlines. Meghan and Redacted reunite at Critics' Choice. But when she never showed, the press scrambled. Where was she? What happened? Then the leaks began. She had shown up. Just not for long. Just long enough to walk in, review the floor plan, and walk right out again. Some say she claimed illness. Others insist she caught a private flight back to New York that very night. But no one bought the excuse. And one whisper, overheard by a production intern, summed it up best. She didn't want to be part of the crash. Cold, brutal, real. The royal echo. Who didn't reach out? After the event, the silence from Buckingham Palace was deafening. Not a word. Not a comment. Not even the typical no comment from palace spokespeople when reporters reached out. Harry and Meghan's seating chart scandal had gone global. And the royals were content to let it breathe. No calls. No private reassurances. No royal family member reaching out through unofficial channels. Nothing. This was not their scandal. It was their vindication. And if you think that didn't sting, think again. Because according to a source close to Harry, someone who had remained friendly with him through the Archwell launch, he checked his phone during the after-party. Multiple times. For what? No one knows. But one can guess. And whatever message he was hoping to see, it never came. Behind the curtain, Meghan's team melts down. While Meghan maintained public composure, her team was scrambling behind the scenes. The moment they realized the seating chart couldn't be adjusted, panic set in. One insider revealed. There were calls made. Texts sent. Even an attempt to swap a seat with a non-VIP guest. No one would budge. They knew what it meant. They knew what people would say. And worst of all, they couldn't spin it. The chart had been photographed, printed, shared. A few PR reps allegedly considered leaking a fake floor plan, but were talked down by more experienced advisors. Why? Because it would only draw more attention to it. So they were forced to sit, smile, endure. And that's where the true PR nightmare began. Social media analysis. Every angle torn apart. By midnight, YouTube breakdowns were already live. Creators froze every frame of Meghan and Harry entering the venue, receiving their seating card, and walking toward table 23. One popular channel even hired a former event planner to grade the seating plan live. Her take? It's calculated, it's cold, and it's career-damaging. She circled table 23, then highlighted who was nearby, then revealed who wasn't. A-listers? Far away. Influencers? Right there. She ended the video with a brutal closing line. You don't sit people here unless you want them to feel it. The video racked up 3 million views in under 12 hours. Comments poured in. She used to sit with Queen Elizabeth. Now she's next to a salad sponsorship. Karma doesn't boo. It assigns your table. This was worse than getting roasted. It was getting ignored. Harry's quiet exit. Hours later, long after the show ended, and after the after-party began, Harry left early. No fanfare. No photos. No public goodbye. He simply slipped out the back, security in tow, with a blank expression. Witnesses say Meghan remained. Why? Some speculate it was damage control. Others believe it was pride. She wasn't going to be seen retreating. Not after everything. But those who saw her say the mask had cracked. One party attendee said, she looked like she was running on fumes. Smile was still there, but the eyes weren't. By 1 a.m., she too was gone. And the story was just beginning. Why the seating chart was the final straw, for some. Within 24 hours, sources close to 2 brands that had previously partnered with Archwell announced pauses in upcoming campaigns. One brand removed Meghan's quote from their homepage. Another pulled a feature piece about her upcoming children's book. Why? Because brand association requires relevance. And after the Critics' Choice fiasco, the Sussexes looked anything but relevant. They looked radioactive. And in a cutthroat business built on image, radioactive doesn't sell. The symbolism was too loud to ignore. They once sat at royal banquets beside kings and queens. Now, They were 30 feet away from the coat check and 3 steps from a dessert table where guests took selfies with other celebrities. No one approached them. No one asked for a photo. No friendly hugs. Not even polite nods. It was the industry version of being placed at the kids' table. Only this time, there would be no adult table left to return to, because the message had been sent. And whether they admitted it or not, they received it, loud and clear. But what came next made the seating plan look kind, because just as they thought the humiliation had peaked, someone took the mic, live, on stage, and with a smile that didn't match her words, she delivered a monologue that would shatter Meghan's composure, and the world would never see her the same again. Where were Oprah, Tyler, and Serena when Meghan needed them most? That's the question that screamed through every camera angle, every awkward cutaway, and every lingering silence during the 2026 Critics' Choice Awards. Because if there was one thing more glaring than the boos, the heckles, and the humiliating seating chart, it was the absence of the Sussexes' once glittering inner circle. These weren't casual acquaintances. These were their ride or dies, the ones who gave them platforms, endorsements, media protection. And yet, when Meghan and Harry walked into the biggest Hollywood room of the year, they walked in alone. Not a single close confidant showed up to shield them. Not one. Oprah, the queen-maker, who went silent. Let's start with the obvious. The woman who arguably rebirthed the Sussex brand in 2021 with that now legendary interview. Where was she? Everyone expected her to be there. Her name was whispered on press lists. There were rumors she was meant to present. Some outlets even held articles and drafts ready to publish. Oprah and Meghan reunite on Critics' Carpet. And then nothing. She didn't show. Not a red carpet appearance. Not a seat filler. Not a pre-recorded segment. Nothing. Not even a vague Instagram post wishing good luck. Oprah's silence wasn't just absence. It was strategic omission. And that silence rang louder than any headline. Why? Because when someone that powerful says nothing, they're really saying everything. Tyler Perry, the protector who closed the door. Let's not forget, Tyler Perry didn't just speak up for Meghan and Harry during their exit from royal life. He sheltered them. Literally. He gave them his home, his security. He lent them legitimacy in a moment of global chaos. So naturally, everyone assumed he'd be there that night, supporting them, sitting with them, clapping for them. Instead, he was in Atlanta, on a different stage, at a charity fundraiser, far away from Hollywood, far away from the Critics' Choice Awards, and far, far away from Meghan and Harry. And while his team told press he was previously committed, no one missed the real point. He chose to commit elsewhere. Serena Williams, the silent sisterhood. Then there was Serena, Meghan's proclaimed best friend, godmother figure to Archie, guest at her wedding, her confidant during the early months of royal chaos. Serena wasn't in the room either, nor did she tweet, or like, or post anything about the Sussexes that week. A fan account even pointed it out. An Instagram story from Serena's stylist showed her at a spa retreat with a caption that read, "Resetting in peace. Unbothered, uninvolved, and most importantly, unavailable." So what happened? Why did everyone vanish? There are theories, some whispered by anonymous insiders. Others hinted at in emails leaked to entertainment journalists. And one possible explanation keeps coming up again and again. The group chat. Yes, that infamous circle of A-list celebrities who reportedly stayed in private digital contact during the peak of Sussex mania. The chat where political campaigns, magazine shoots, and public statements were coordinated. Well, according to a leaked DM from a former Archwell employee, the chat dried up by mid-2025. One by one they left, and no one added Meghan back when she got kicked. Now, whether that's true or not, it feels true. Because this year, none of them showed up. None of them reposted. None of them even defended her when the Critics' Choice backlash exploded. Not even a generic, "we stand by our friends" PR line. Nothing. A-listers who walked by, without stopping. If Meghan thought she'd be embraced once inside the venue, that fantasy ended fast. Multiple clips showed A-listers walking within feet of her during cocktail hour. Former co-stars. Former allies. People who once fawned over her on red carpets now passed her by like she didn't exist. No air kisses. No hugs. No post photos. One actress, who starred with Meghan on Suits, was caught walking behind her, pausing, then veering hard left when she saw the cameras pointing in their direction. That clip? 5.1 million views. Captioned, "When you see your old friend, but remember your publicist told you to avoid drama at all costs." Brutal. The publicist problem. No one wants to catch the fallout. A talent agent told Variety anonymously, "It's not even personal. It's professional self-preservation. The Sussexes are chaos now. No one wants to be next to chaos." Another PR rep confirmed, "We had a client request to avoid sitting near them, not because she doesn't like them, but because she didn't want the optics." This is what happens when you lose control of the narrative. No one wants to be caught in the splash zone. No one wants to be the next person guilt into defending a spiraling brand. So they distance themselves, quietly, systematically, until all that's left is an empty table and a fading spotlight. The body language that spoke louder than words. Several body language experts broke down the Critics' Choice footage in viral YouTube explainers. Their findings? Devastating. Meghan reached for Harry's hand 5 times during the event. He only clasped it twice. Her smiles became less frequent after each presenter jab. She looked around the room repeatedly, as if searching for someone who never arrived. At one point, she adjusted her necklace in a circular motion, a common self-soothing gesture, experts say, in moments of high stress or emotional isolation. It wasn't acting. It wasn't performative. It was survival mode. And the fact that no one stepped in made it even harder to watch. The influencer backlash. It wasn't just big names that distanced themselves. Even influencers, people who once capitalized on being Team Meghan, started backing away. One TikTok personality who built her following defending Meghan during the royal exit posted a video saying, "I used to root for her. I really did. But something changed. The way she moves now? It feels off." Another former ally removed all Sussex-related content from her Instagram page. A fan forum noticed, screenshotted the before and after, posted side-by-sides of their feeds. Even her defenders are sanitizing. Ouch. Harry's isolation within isolation. Here's something else that stung. Even Harry's military allies, people he once celebrated at Invictus Games and stood by during wartime documentaries, were nowhere in sight. There was a time when his credibility as a veteran gave him insulation from media noise. That time, it seems, is over. A retired British soldier who once appeared in Harry's charity campaigns tweeted the night of the ceremony, "Wish I could say I was surprised. Hollywood eats its own, especially when they forget who they were before the cameras." And the replies? Brutally supportive. Harry, the soldier, had become Harry, the spectacle, and the Brotherhood was over it. The realization on Meghan's face. Let's circle back to one chilling moment. Midway through the show, just after another passive-aggressive presenter jab, the camera caught Meghan clapping, but not smiling. Her eyes scanned the audience. Then the camera cut, fast, but not before viewers saw the flicker. That moment when she realized no one in the room was looking back. She wasn't seen. She was watched. And there's a difference. To be watched is to be consumed. To be seen is to be valued. And in that room, there was no value left in defending Meghan Markle or standing by Prince Harry, because the room had made its decision. But someone outside the room was watching too, and they weren't laughing. They were planning something far worse, a betrayal that would come from within. The presenter walks out, and Hollywood holds its breath. The first presenter of the night was a well-known actor, charismatic, comfortable on stage, the kind of guy who can make even a bad joke land. He strolled out to applause and delivered the standard pleasantries. "Good evening, everyone. It's great to be here celebrating some of the best work in film and television this year." Harmless, charming, expected. But then it shifted. Without missing a beat, he launched into a joke. One that wasn't on the teleprompter. A joke that didn't land. Because it wasn't supposed to. He smirked and looked right at the audience. "Well, you know it's a great night when everyone who wasn't nominated still shows up. Hope they brought extra bodyguards." A laugh. Awkward. Sharp. Targeted. No one said the names. They didn't have to. The camera panned slowly across the audience. And there, seated near the center, were Meghan and Harry. Motionless. Smiling. But only just. Micro reactions, macro damage. That moment, barely 10 seconds long, lit the internet on fire. In slow motion, TikTok users analyzed Meghan's brow twitch. Harry's clenched hand, the rapid blink, the long inhale. All of it. Was it planned? Was it revenge? Or was it Hollywood's way of telling them, "You're not above the room anymore"? And the audience? They knew better than to laugh too loudly. But they still laughed. Even those who'd worked with the Sussexes. Even those who once posted support. It was the kind of moment you can't walk back. And the Sussexes felt it. Deeply. Because it wasn't just a dig. It was a signal. The room was no longer on their side. The PR playbook, freezing in plain sight. Here's the thing. Meghan and Harry have trained for moments like this. Media strategy is their game. They know how to control optics. But what do you do when the optics turn on you live without warning? You freeze. You pivot. You pray the camera cuts away. And that's exactly what happened. Meghan's smile never dropped, but it shifted. It hardened, turned into something fixed and mechanical. Harry? He looked down. 1 second too long. And then, right back up again. But the damage was already done. The audience members who turned away. After the presenter's jab, something even stranger happened. 2 guests at a nearby table visibly turned their backs. Not by accident. Not subtly. They turned their bodies away from Meghan and Harry as if to say, "You're not part of this anymore." One of those guests was a rising star in indie film. The other? A director who once publicly supported Meghan after the Oprah interview. A fan caught the moment on camera. It went viral in less than an hour. Captioned, "When Hollywood Ghosts You in 4K. The video has 8.3 million views as of this morning. And counting. So why did they stay? That's the million-dollar question, isn't it? Why didn't they leave? They could have. At any moment. They weren't presenting. They weren't nominated. They had every reason to slip out quietly, regroup, save face. But they didn't. They stayed. Smiled. Clapped. Sat through every awkward moment like it didn't bother them. But we know better. Because minutes later, a backstage camera would catch a different side. A crack in the mask. A flash of emotion. A single line from Meghan, whispered just loud enough to be caught by the boom mic. I knew this was a mistake. Harry didn't respond. He looked straight ahead. Frozen. Eyes glassy. Like a man who knew the avalanche was just beginning. Audience watchers, the look-away game. Hollywood actors have their own way of communicating, and it's not through words.